Use headphones.
Hello, everybody. So, a quick message before the video starts. Firstly, I would like to thank the author, Angelo DiBartolo, for asking me to narrate his original piece. I'm actually hoping this can become sort of a reoccurring series in the channel, as he's already writing a second story that takes place in the same universe. Also, one other thing, there is a mature scene in this narration, but it's so well written that you can barely notice it. I'd say it's probably 16 plus, so just a heads up. But without further ado, I hope you enjoy the video. So that's really it? I asked bitterly. You come to my birthday party saying it's good to see you, only to fracture my heart in the same breath? It wasn't that I hadn't felt the decline. Brenda and I would have disagreements that ended with bitter dissatisfaction. Days where thoughts would hang in the air, untethered by words that could have built the bridge between us. I know this might feel personal. Trust me, it's not, Brenda sighed. I groaned internally because I immediately knew the classic, "It's not you, it's me," when I heard it. I'm just not in the right frame of mind. It's not fair to you, and I can't keep watching you suffer in silence. I'll be in touch, but I think we function better as friends. Floored wouldn't really be an accurate description of how I felt. It rang clear as obliterated. The red flags were waving high, but I didn't expect it all to come crashing to that much of a halt. I lived in the delusion that there was still time to change course, time to avoid collision with the harsh, bitter truth. At least she didn't drop it on me like a ton of bricks in front of my friends. I only dread to imagine the scene. Candles are blown out on my cake, there's laughter, perhaps clapping, and then bam, you aren't enough for me. I knew it was bullshit when she pulled out the tried and true golden phrase. I'm sure they knew it was off. I'm not good at pretending when something is cannibalizing my heart, making a home from the empty space in my chest. But I know better than to lick my wounds. I know better than to ask for help when the object of my despair watches from the corner, wearing his false smile as well. The rest of the day was painfully dry. My companions left one by one until I sat alone in my apartment, watching the TV without really caring what was going on. As far as I can recall, it may have just been a sports talk show. I stared in silent contemplation, wondering if the hosts in their suits and ties were better actors, hiding some life-changing event behind analytical arguments and half-baked jokes. Focusing on overdue classwork was just another thorn in my side. Funny for all of the roses I've known. Fate typically favors the tragic end of my spectrum. Just another thorn. Just one more depressing inconvenience. Left on red for weeks, always left out of plans for group get-togethers. Feels like I'm left at the wayside. I told myself it'd get better, but it was never something I believed. Felt more like a band-aid on a missing limb than something that could nullify the constant pain. Work brought no reprieve either. I was a barista at Starbucks, taking orders, making drinks, putting up with the usual annoyances one faces in the service industry. My coworkers weren't much for company. I had the distinct impression that I didn't meet their standards without even having a barometer for what they were. I wasn't a part of the team. I was just there to earn the crumbs I was entitled to. No inside jokes because, well, I wasn't on the inside. The few stragglers at the end of the shift gradually made their way out. Just some quiet old folk and a college student preparing for finals. As they were filtering out with 10 minutes left before we locked up, I damn near let out a sigh seeing a car pull up into one of the parking spots out front. It was a black, nondescript Volkswagen Beetle. I only saw it because of the burning bright headlights. Beyond that, the vehicle seemed to melt into the gloom, like the plastic, steel, and rubber were being swallowed by the night. From the car emerged a blonde-haired woman, donning an intricately textured scarf that felt almost alive in art forms that capitulated to the breeze. Blue leggings complemented her figure even in the streetlights. A touch of the familiar sandwiched into something that felt deliberately misplaced by time. Her jewelry glimmered impossibly, as if those sapphires beamed without the need for photons. The soft reflection caught the glow of the front lights of the store, casting a faint blue halo around her wrist and collarbone. It wasn't merely craftsmanship. It was as if the stones themselves pulsed with intelligence. Wandering up to the door, she paused at the glass, likely realizing the time and how people were making their way out at our silent behest. She looked like a concoction of confusion and disappointment at the fact that she didn't make it on time. But before she walked back to her car, she surveyed the inside, her gaze eventually meeting mine. I wanted to point to my wrist, the universal sign for check the time, but I found that I couldn't. It was like proverbial hands grasped out at my motor functions, forcing my attention solely on gazing back. I wasn't sure if it was a trick of the mind, but I was half certain I saw a faint pinprick of blue light in those irises, even standing roughly 20 feet away. She briefly waved with a slight smile, and finally I had control of my limbs again. So I returned the gesture in kind. A chill sped through my body, raising hairs on my spine. It wasn't born of fear, but of a strange kind of reverence. The weight of the encounter, the mysterious aura that she flaunted about as she sauntered back into the parking lot. I turned around, almost embarrassed to see if anyone caught me staring, but they were much too busy clocking out. The moment sought refuge in my skull when I returned home, that pocket of unparalleled wonder, and I was meant to return to my small, dreary apartment to continue my equally cumbersome life? Searching my fridge for something to eat, I settled on a piece of leftover birthday cake, and I washed it down with a glass of milk after each bite. Sleep didn't come easily for me that night, and when it eventually found me, it was far overdue. But with my slumber came a dream. I found myself in an alley of an ancient city. Strange carvings marked the path forward, the faces of mad gods etched into the stone with depictions of repeating doomsday, illustrating a perennial misery unknown to man. Bewildered, I turned to gaze at the sky, being met with a wordless dread. For I could not discern if it was day or night. The faint luminance in the atmosphere acted as more of a fluctuation than an indicator of time. I must have studied that perplexing array for 5 whole minutes, my mouth hanging agape in awe without language. Stumbling forth in vague awareness, the landscape melted into a modern-day metropolis. Spinning around a face where I'd just come from, my mind fractured in its attempt to comprehend what existed before me. A doorway that knew no frame, a threshold whose bounds I could not identify. The crude structures and eldritch cravings alluded impossibly to the urban extreme I found myself in. A disembodied voice slithered its way into my hippocampus from the opening of my right ear, sending an armada of goosebumps radiating down my body.
You have a date with destiny. You just don't know it yet. Find Seraphine.
It breathed. Frantically checking over my shoulders, I discovered that I wasn't alone. Robed figures were now cluttering the sidewalks, their garments decorated with innumerable symbols. In and among the figures, I glimpsed her, the woman from Starbucks, yet no one at all. Tiny constellations clung to her cloak as though they were stitched into fabric. It flowed behind her in the imaginary breeze as her hood slowly turned to face me. The glimmer I saw in those eyes was present, but somehow stronger. They found mine and dug deeper, brushing the very essence of my being. The veil of shadow was lifted as she revealed her freshly stylized hair and flashed a smile that filled me with secondhand bliss. I waved to her nervously, and she did the same without hesitation. Just as a warm feeling overcame my chest, I awoke with the sun rudely in my face. I waited a long time to see her again. If there were any callouts, any minor inconveniences for my coworkers, I'd take the opportunity to snatch up another shift. Medical emergency? No show with no warning? Extra hours for the taking. and the time was all mine. When I wasn't taking orders or preparing drinks for impatient customers, I was staring out the front windows, watching for that beetle. A few times my manager grew annoyed, demanding that I at least wipe down the counter if I wasn't going to do anything else. I only listened about half the time. The truth is, I don't think she knew the juxtaposition I saw. Nobody saw it. All my family was ever good for was bestowing judgment. My friends had happier times without me. My life, mundane and monotonous, backlit against something incredible. The first point of intrigue after weeks, months, hell, even years of disappointment, and that mystique of another life through the shape of Seraphine, the face that yearned to conquer my dreams, the only customer I waited for so obsessively. Several months passed by. It was another lonesome shift that was winding down with about 45 minutes left on the clock. Checking my notifications out of boredom, I glimpsed dozens of ignored texts from my old friends. I didn't bother giving them the time of day. Their vacant promises wouldn't change my predisposition. The door swung open, and it took me several moments to process it. It was her, in a pair of black jeans and a tank top of the same hue. Even in such familiar attire, I couldn't help but feel reminded of the void cloak she wore in my slumbering reverie. I tried my best to act calm and collected as she approached. "Hello," she chirped. Fuck, it was already happening. Palms were sweating the moment she approached. Hey there, how are ya?" I asked, trying and failing to be nonchalant. "I'm alright, just existing as normal," she mused. "I'll take an iced caramel macchiato, but can you use the vanilla syrup and caramel in a swirl pattern instead of the standard layers?" Sure thing. Can I get a name for the order?" This was the moment of truth. Seems like nothing for anybody else, but it's a step in the right direction. A simple, "I like your name, do you have an Instagram?" kind of approach that was semi-cringeworthy, but it's worked for people before. For reasons I couldn't understand, she hesitated. "It's Sarah," in a tone I hadn't expected. It was like she pondered something behind my scenes before giving a cautious answer. As soon as I was done making her drink, I wrote her name on the label and announced her order was ready. Graciously accepting it, she was about to bid me goodnight, but she faltered where she stood. "Just for future reference," she said. Oh boy, what could this be? I thought with dread. She walked back to the counter, leaned in slightly, her voice soft against the bustling cafe noise. "It's spelled Serah. You were close enough, though. What's your name?" Charles." "Well, see you soon then, Charles." I was pelted with surprise, hardly believing what had just happened. But that was only half of the equation. "Oh, and one more thing." She peeled the label from the cup and handed it back to me. I blinked, not sure if I was seeing it correctly. The slip she gave me said, Sarah, but that wasn't right. The cup didn't leave my sight for one moment. I definitely spelled it incorrectly. As she walked out of the doors into the twilight beyond the glow of the store, I flipped it over to see if maybe I gave her two labels by accident and she somehow managed to write the proper spelling of her name. But it was something much better than that. Written in perfect penmanship was her number. The mix of emotions I felt in that moment was special beyond dialect. I was over the moon with giddy uncertainty. I had, perhaps, acquired a date through means I struggled to wrap my head around. The wounds my ex gave me no longer bled, and even if they did, I was fine with not feeling the pain. I had a pathway higher into something better, and that was all that mattered. My parents wouldn't understand, my friends didn't need to know either. I truly didn't care anymore. That night, I stared at the slip for what felt like hours. Even if I was working on an essay, it remained in my peripheral vision. It held power over my attention. As I went to put it in my phone, 1,000 unsent messages were sent blazing through my mind. But As the potential greetings began to overlap and fuse in my mind, I decided to just go for it. Some absurd kind of confidence overtook me after that close encounter at Starbucks. I began to embody the man I always wanted to be. Finally, I typed, "Hey, it's me from Starbucks. I don't know if you meant for this to happen, but I have your phone number. Must have forgotten it. It's only human." I set my phone down, my confidence dashed almost immediately as it had rushed upon me. That had to be the worst way to open up a conversation, and I wasn't about to forgive myself without some soul-searching. It wasn't long before my phone buzzed with a reply.
No, it was very much intentional. I thought you might want it.
My body temperature rose by several degrees, and I took a moment to compose myself. "It was nice to meet you earlier. I think I saw you a while ago, but it was late," I mused.
Have you seen it yet?
That threw me through a loop. Obviously not a logical response. It felt more like a non sequitur. Seen what?
You know it.
I couldn't place my finger on it, and I was almost scared that this was a joke flying over my head. As in the Stephen King's It? I saw the new ones, but the original is better in my opinion.
The city. Have you seen it?
How could you possibly know?
We're already there. You just don't know it yet.
I felt chills run down my spine as I remembered the mind-numbing sights, reeling as I remembered the ominous hooded figures as they scuttled about. And there she was, a seraphine, a refraction of the woman I was rapidly falling for. What are you? I was legitimately staring at my screen. The deficit of words I could say was increasing in sharp decline.
Not the right question,
she replied.
You're trying to fit a shape you don't understand into a world you think you know. But this place you inhabit is merely a canvas, and someone has been painting over it.
A shape? Someone painting over my world? What are you on about?
Sometimes it bleeds through,
she explained.
A face you can't quite recognize. A whisper in an empty room. A dream that feels too lucid.
Her next message came almost too fast, a blur on my screen.
That tingling feeling when you're alone, but your survival instincts sound the alarms in your brain. All of those things are the brushstrokes.
A chill ran down my spine thinking about it. The crippling isolation from everything else in my life, the constant reverberation of doubt in my mind. And how do you fit into all of this? She paused to consider before even answering.
A muse of sorts. A shadow to guide the passenger. But not even I exist beyond the threshold of the art form. I'm just easier to make out in places where the paint is worn thin.
Her words twisted within me, and I pondered the weight of what they could imply. Am I the creation of a cosmic painter? What happens when the worn-away paint leads to an erosion of detail? Is that the conclusion of sentience? What could she know about the construct?
If you really want to know the answer to that question,
her next message came, and I barely breathed.
Come by my place Friday night.
The days after that initial conversation dragged on like snails on concrete. It moved, but the anticipation brought on a sense of stasis, a frozen, sinking feeling in my chest that also felt like excitement, a rushing thrill that I was somehow chosen. Sarah went to my head and lingered like a haunting refrain. I'd be lying if I said she didn't have my heartstrings tightly pulled. Every morning, I woke to a sense of displacement, staring at my ceiling as if to expect it to ripple like water. The walls of my apartment seemed duller. I'd check my notifications and glimpse worried texts from my parents, but again, I cared not to reach out. They couldn't understand. And even if they did, there's a difference between knowing it and comprehending it. They won't see why I am the way I am. Each evening, I read the conversation over again to make sure I hadn't missed something. A clue, a piece of this twisted puzzle. hoping that a phrase might unlock the meaning of her words. The canvas, the brushstrokes, the weathered paint. Her reasoning was of poetry laced with madness, yet I found myself reciting them in silence, hoping the repetition would trick me into having an answer. When the day arrived, I combed through my wardrobe in search of something that could give her a damn good impression. After frustration and what was likely an hour of wondering, I settled on black jeans and a band shirt. I know, not the most flattering attire. Shut up. It was all I had, and I made sure, come hell or high water, that my shirt was devoid of wrinkles. The drive to her place wasn't very far away, but the route felt so unfamiliar. The streets I did know felt like altered memories, and their landmarks were mere outlines of ghosts. I was pleasantly surprised when I pulled up on the address. It screamed upper middle class with 2 stories, a lengthy driveway, and a garden poking out from the backyard. I knocked on the door twice, and I had to wait maybe about 10 seconds before it drifted open to reveal Sarah standing with a warm smile on her face. Glad you could make it. You came at a perfect time. I'm making dinner. Dinner? I tried to keep my voice steady. Didn't realize I was imposing. Nonsense, she laughed. I can always make a little extra. Call it a habit of mine. I followed her into the house, letting my eyes wander a bit, only to remind myself to be respectful. The place had a warm atmosphere. The lovely aroma of spices wafted around the halls, complemented by framed art of a sunset on the living room wall. By the way, I hope you like wine. Red, of course. Anything else wouldn't feel right. Sure thing, I said. What are you making? Chicken and pasta. Tried and true, but with a recipe I picked from somewhere far away. Like the city? We'll get to that. You seem tense, Charles. You should lighten up a bit. She smiled and did her best to reassure me. It's a family recipe. We'll call it umbro pasta. It's something my mom butchered, but my grandma was a master at. I sat at the kitchen table, finding it in myself to let out the breath I had been holding. So, what do you do? She asked while stirring the pot in intricate patterns. Well, as you know, I work at Starbucks, and I'm going to college for education. Nothing crazy. Eventually, I'll be putting up with snot-nosed children and grading essays. She laughed at that, and it was a sound that cleansed me of my nervousness. It even made me chuckle a bit. I think you'd make a great teacher, and hey, we need more of those, she gestured. Sarah's meal was absolutely delicious. The seasoning on the chicken was none that I'd ever had before. Mentally, it took me to a place equally exotic and strangely familiar. And the pasta sauce, it was so creamy and it reminded me vaguely of Alfredo. I sipped on my glass of wine and asked, What is it that you do? A student of souls. A scholar of the other worlds, she responded cryptically. So you got jokes. You wanted answers, right? Yeah, but why is everything so vague? She took a moment to think before her gaze met mine again. I think in some regard, you already know why we're here. Your subconscious just locked away the memory out of some natural mechanism of self-preservation. But at your request, I'll tell you. I found myself holding my breath again, anticipating the truth bomb that she would drop. You're lonely, as am I. And I believe that the city brought us together for a reason far grander than you or I can fathom. Though I am the line between present and absent, existent and speculative, it's beyond even my grasp. You might think me to be delusional, but I know for a fact that you saw the city, and you knew a version of my name before I had the chance to tell you. But why me? Why have I been given the prophecy? My thoughts were falling apart into a state of irreparable disbelief. Because you love in a manner that no one in this world can reciprocate, and that's what brought you to me. I believe that we were destined to be together, Charles. My heart fluttered and tripped over the beat of its own drum. Are you telling me that I manifested this? She grinned. Not quite. It's the inverse that occurs. The temple manifests you. Still blown out of my mind, I asked the question that had troubled me all week. So what are you? Whatever you desire me to be. My breath came in sharp, trembling in waves, my mind reeling with everything she'd said to me. The way her sentiments felt like fire and her voice like a song I'd forgotten. I didn't know if I fully believed her, if I could even wrap my mind around it. But none of that mattered. I leaned forward, her name a whisper on my tongue. Sarah. Her eyes softened, her lips parting just slightly, an invitation like a rich, full promise. We kissed slowly at first. Then the feeling grew into desperation, like she was the only thing in my world that had the capacity to dissolve. We stood up and she pulled me into her arms, her warmth and tether that lifted me from the cumbersome precipice I had once faced. Her touch was a spell that I was helplessly inflicted by. She pressed herself up against me, deepening the connection to something that felt primal. Let's continue this elsewhere, she cooed. With that, she led me by the hand to her bedroom, not even bothering to put the food away. The only illumination was from the streetlight down the road. Darkness enveloped me as she pushed me onto the bed. I lost myself in everything she was. The taste of her lips, the soft gasp that escaped from her mouth, the warmth of her skin beneath my hands. It felt surreal, like I had ascended the concept of sensation. Our bodies moved in polyrhythm, a dance that felt both modern and ancient, a hunger that seemed to intensify as I leaned further into the sway of her motion. Her voice was an uttered melody, my name a prayer on her lips. For a moment, in between the ecstasy and the sweat, I thought I saw that soft glow in her eyes, like portals to that place, distant yet perfectly within arm's reach. She left me panting and entangled with her body, like branches in a flood. Her heartbeat remained a constant pulse beneath my ear as I made her delicate form my bed to lie upon. Sleep, darling, she murmured. Close your eyes, let yourself remember. I knew I was dreaming before I even realized what had happened. I stood with Seraphine in what looked to be a nightmarish hybrid of the ancient ruins and the modern megalopolis. Murals of forgotten deities leered down at us, mysterious, unblinking lights flew overhead, and robed figures strode past us as I placed my hand gently on her cheek. I briefly looked away from her eyes to absorb the organized cataclysm before us, when I spotted something that made me question my mortality. Several black spires in the skyline flirted with the heavens above and superseded them beyond what my eyes could see. They were textured in spirals that ascended up the sides, like millions of steps upward into a theoretical zenith. We don't have to wake up soon, do we? I barely managed to croak out in my concoction of fascination and bottomless astonishment. No, Charles, this is no longer a dream. This is where the pain ceases to be. This is where we dance perennially, just as we were always meant to. You and I will find our way together, to the spires. We will uncover the nature of our creation. Suddenly, it all made sense. Everything clicked into place. With tears in my eyes and a bittersweet grin spreading across my face, I kissed her once more. Welcome to the city of gods, she joyously proclaimed. I wrapped my arms around her and closed my eyes as she unfurled a pair of glorious, feathered wings from her shoulder blades.
Sometimes it's not the darkness itself that consumes somebody, but the quiet ache it leaves behind. Depression is a realm all its own, a place where familiarity feels hostile without the need for violence, where the faces of old friends become apparatuses of the opaque, and the sky hangs heavy with a pale, empty light. But perhaps the cruelest truth of all is that the most painful emptiness is born not from the absence of love, but from the memory of it, the way in which it lingers like an obscure lullaby that lies just beyond recollection. The words slip away, but the melody stands to be a relic. The city of gods may be a place of peerless terror, but it is also the mirror image on the surface of water, every silent question, every unspoken fear. And sometimes, the only thing scarier than being lost in its midst is realizing that one may never want to leave.